As our mandala wheel continues to turn throughout Cancer season, we are now coming into gate number 53, beginnings, which is our third activation down in that root center within your human design chart. In the teachings of the I Ching, this is sensing the pressure to begin something, anything, so long as it's new and different from what has been experienced before. In the human design chart, our root center gives us pressure in the form of stress. And in this case, it is really a physical pressure that is felt within the body to begin something. And a lot of times this comes with a anxiousness or a desire to get moving, to try something new, to go out and have experiences. It is designed to allow us to embrace the multitude that life does offer to us and really encourages the beginning of a new pattern, a new experiment, or moving you forward away from things that are not of your highest good. In its shadow essence, it also has the ability to keep us distracted. And when we're always trying to chase a new beginning or a new experience because we are bored, we lack the maturity to stay present, so to speak, then we're going to find ourselves always in a reactive nature of continually chasing after something instead of dedicating ourselves towards finding what it is that really is calling the heart and the higher soul's essence and maintaining what it takes to see it through to the completion of a cycle. So, in this energy, there is the pressure to begin, but not necessarily to complete what you start. And it really is driving us towards ridding the pressure of that boredom, wanting to have a new experience. It is an impatient energy or an immaturity, which is the shadow essence in this, to become involved with something that you know is not going to work out, but you do it anyway. And a lot of times, we might have conversations with our friends and they have an idea and you're like, oh, let's go ahead and do that. Even though well, that's not going to work or you're not going to be around to see it to the final conclusion. But there is an excitement in that moment of wanting to jump on board. And it's really important for us to consider, do you tend to have a lot of things that are started and left unfinished? Are you somebody who very much has things throughout the house or within your life where you get so far and then for whatever reason you abandon them and you move quickly on to the next thing? Now, you might be designed to be what is called a serial starter. And if you have gate 53 active in your human design chart, and especially if this falls in your sun sign, your conscious personality, then that means that you are really here to be a launch pad for ideas and initiatives. So that is best applied in helping somebody else to get their ideas off the ground, to give them the motivation or perhaps even the assistance to start their own initiatives, but then to know the grace of stepping back to allow them the benefit of learning through their own experience and seeing what it is that they're doing through to completion. In ourself, it is really important to learn to only engage and begin those things that are in deep resonance to the soul's guidance, in which case you will find the motivation and the support that's necessary to see it all the way to the end. But in doing so, it's becoming aware of the pressure of all the distractions that may be trying to seep in through the doorway that is there in its immature sense of, let's just get out and try something new, or this is too hard, let's go find something that's easier. And really kind of notice those patterns within yourself so that you can fine tune it into the maturity of I'm only going to take on what it is that I'm being guided to do, and that is realistic in what I can handle in this time. So it's teaching us to connect what is most natural to you. And we forget that the things that are most natural to us come to us very easily. But because it's easy, we're taught from the world of conditioning around us that you must go force something into creation. So if it's easy, if it's simple, the mind has a really hard time embracing that as one's gift. It's always seeking something that has to be more difficult, or it tries to make what is natural and really pretty it up. I remember when I was editing Corey Thorne's third book, Wine and Chips, it really talked about the raw essence of the potato. The potato is full of nutrients. There is nothing wrong with the raw potato. But for whatever reason, we decided we had to pretty it up. We had to make it into a chip. So we sliced and diced the potato and we fried the potato, and then we started placing it in different bags. And it came with certain labels, and some had no-name brands and some had other brands that were a lot more popular. So there was this competition now fighting over who got to control the taste buds, leading towards a souped up creation of the potato. Meanwhile, every design came back to its original source, came back to the purity of that potato. So it's really leaning into what is natural to you. What are your beautiful gifts? And every time there's a moment to start something new, when it's coming from a place of inner guidance, you're going to find that that desire to just intuitively embrace every moment one at a time, well, that's a new beginning. It's a new beginning to check in with the guidance system, the light within, and ask, what's next? What's next? What's next? But you're very present in each and every moment. And when it comes from that place of excitement and this openness from life, you're going to find that your days are going to feel very successful. You're going to have a heightened sense of energy within you. Things are going to be a lot more appealing. Whereas if everything's coming from the mind, and the mind is trying to force things step by step by step, or it's so programmed to the to-do list or what it believes it should do, or it gets so easily bored that it can't sit still and listening. So it's always chasing its tail, like a dog going in circles, chasing that tail around. Then you're likely going to find yourself very frustrated, starting a lot of things that you have no desire to ever finish, or you feel the pressure of, oh my gosh, I should really get to that, but then not feeling motivated to get to that. So it starts the dialogue of berating yourself, condemning yourself, feeling guilty for those things. So it's really coming into an awareness of how the pressure to begin something starts by a seed planted in the mind, but in its truth is a deeper seed planted into the root of your own evolution. So we want to move from the root of the mind and drop down into the true root of our existence to connect further into the human journey, the opportunity to be a physical presence on earth, to be an open vessel to love, to light, for whatever it is that you came as your soul's gift to the rest of humanity, to really align yourself to beginning the path that is for your highest good. Or if you're already in alignment to that, maintaining your commitment, your devotion to continuously embracing each new moment that is leading you down that direction, fulfilling your soul's desire. So we're also going to see that this is part of what is known as the channel of cycles. So again, you're going to want to check your human design chart to see if you already have this cycle in your chart, this channel of cycles. And it is coming from that sacral center. So your sacral center in human design is the center of your life force energy. If it is colored in your chart, you are either a generator or a manifesting generator. And this is where you're really listening for those sacral sounds. So beyond your words, how does your body indicate if you like something, if you don't like something, if you're not sure about something? There is a pressure in there to use your life force energy towards doing those things that ultimately help you feel satisfied. But you're also designed to respond, which means you have to allow things to come to you for your energy to then respond to it and go, ooh, yes, I like that, or I don't like that, or I'm not sure. It's not coming from a program of the mind. So the more we tune into our body and the more you get to know your rhythms, your cycles, your energy flows, and understanding that everything in life happens in a cycle. There is an ending, there is a beginning, there is a journey in between. That is the evolution for all things. So whenever we start something, whenever we engage in a cycle, a learning lesson, it has to be completed before a new cycle can begin again. So if you're finding yourself always repeating the same things over and over and being like, why is this showing up for me again? Why do I keep ending up in these kind of relationships? Why do I keep, hitting these brick walls? Why can't I get any further? That is your opportunity to look at, well, what pattern are you on? What is it that you're trying to force to do, but you're not listening to the intuitive guidance within you that is trying to direct you on the path? And that comes from a process of being so caught up in our mind because we've been conditioned that we have to figure it out. We, as little individuals, have to figure it out. Meanwhile, we have this huge guidance team of support all around us. So, in learning to tune our body back to the natural cycles of life itself, and Mother Earth is our greatest teacher for that. Mother Earth has that resonance, that vibrational frequency that is actually quite slow. Humans vibrate at a much faster rate because of the pressure we create for ourselves. But if we allow ourselves to slow down, to get back in tune to the natural cycles of knowing when it is time to rest, when it is time to go, when it is time to create, when it is time to absorb, those are all part of the cycles that support seeing things from the beginning, the middle, and the end, allowing you then to rise into a new journey. Trusting that gut response then is everything. Trusting in the wisdom within your cellular body is so important in deciding, what is correct for you. So if you are somebody who is of emotional authority, and it'll tell you that on your chart, your solar plexus is going to be colored in. Being spontaneous does not work because there's a natural emotional wave that rides through the body. It's only when you are in a place of emotional neutrality do you then have the clarity of the body's wisdom that tells you if that is correct for you to do or not. You might be feeling a lot of pressures from somebody else's emotional energy to make a quick decision. You may be feeling the fears of somebody else that then makes you feel a lot more reactive instead of responsive. If your root center is not colored in, if it's undefined, you're amplifying the stress of other people in your environment, and you may want to act prematurely instead of allowing yourself the time to go at your own natural pace. If you have an open heart center in your human design chart, you may be under the conditioning of, I got to prove myself. I got to show them that I'm worthy. So there's many ways of really using your human design chart to notice, why do I always engage in these patterns and cycles that then end up hurting me or ending nowhere or leave me feeling depleted of energy or walking away feeling frustrated? And most importantly, how can I use my birth chart, my human design, my understanding of the gene keys to really maximize my life force energy so that I'm only doing those things that rejuvenate me, that align to me, that fill up the essence, that really feel satisfying. So the energy is here to support new beginnings and to advance the soul's journey. Our soul, our spirit within, that can only rise when you come in harmony with the mind and the body. That's why we have the mind, body, spirit connection. But it can only come up. The light of you can only step to the forefront when we get out of the way, when the ego gets out of the way, the identity gets out of the way, the pressures of the thought of I have to do something gets out of the way, and you attune instead to the natural cycles of life itself and allow it to move through you. So if you have this channel in your chart, you are amazing at helping other people get started with their ideas. But it's also really important to notice, just because you're good at something, is it correct for you to get too involved? Are you interfering with somebody else's ability to learn through their own evolution? And all that was required from you was a quick lighting of a match to start their fire, to inspire them to continue on. A lot of times we get so wrapped up in somebody else's creative journey or their excitement that we invest so much of our time and effort into feeding somebody else's dreams. But is that coming at a cost of your own? So it's really important to find the balance because it's beautiful to help one another to rise up and to grow, but it may require a lot less of your assistance than the mind is trying to tell you it does. You may be investing too much because there's an inability to let go. There's a fear story. There's a desire to be needed, to be wanted. We have so many aspects to our conditioning, and that's why it's so important to get to know who you are. What is it that is really resonating with your truth and your journey? So life really is a story for us. There is a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. And just like the picture that we saw in the teachings of the I Ching, you want to choose a book off the bookshelf that you want to actually read all the way through. You don't want to have to leave a bunch of books that are unread all around the house because it's no longer interesting to you. You want to make sure that you're only choosing those things that you will see to the full completion. That will keep you motivated, they keep you excited, they are feeding you the energy required to dig deep when you do face a barrier or a challenge. And this is why we're going to see that the shadow here is immaturity. Because when we're immature in our growth, when it's the little child in us that is reacting and something gets too hard, it's really easy to give up. But when we step into our maturity, when we become wiser through our learning experience, we will understand that those roadblocks, those challenges are actually opportunities for amazing growth. And when you get to the other side of those challenges, you now have gained more strength, more confidence, more dedication. You have the ability to problem solve. So there is so much energy in here that is really connecting us to start something new, to get on a cycle of something that is for your highest good, and to really recognize a tendency to jump from thing to thing without any understanding as to why you are engaging in that and who is it truly serving. So we're going to move in now to the teachings of the gene keys. And the gene keys is the little key that then unlocks the gateway. So each one of those numbers in your human design chart, they are numbered from 1 to 64, meaning we have 64 codon strands within our cellular DNA. So the key comes in to unlock the doorway to give us the inner alchemy that we can then use to rise from the shadow, the lower vibrating energies, up into the gift, the higher vibrating energies. So we are using the book of the Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. You are going to see a lot of extracts from these teachings in the next couple of slides. And I do encourage you to get your own copy of the Gene Keys if that is available to you in order to do some deep contemplations for yourself. So we're going to move through the shadow of immaturity. We're going to explore the dilemma of restlessness. So when the body feels really restless, we're going to move into the gift of expansion. And we're going to talk about the Sudi, which is the highest light essence in here of super abundance. So starting with that shadow of immaturity and the dilemma of restlessness. And I love the analogy of, having an apple that appears to be absolute perfection on the outside. And when we go to the grocery store, that's what we see. We only see the prettiness of the fruit. It has a wax coating, it has transferred from many different miles, but we have altered that apple so that it appears to be perfect. Because if something doesn't look to be perfect, we tend to dismiss it. And if you've ever seen an apple growing naturally on a tree, well, it's going to have little imperfections on it, but it is also going to be that much sweeter. And that is who we are as humans. We are also perfectly imperfect, but yet we've been taught to hide our flaws. We've been taught to be ashamed of our so-called imperfections instead of recognizing that we're all just learning and growing, and we're all just here to really embrace life. So in this analogy, there's always a worm hiding inside the apple. There's always something rotten at the core of us when it is coming from fear. So it's so important to ask yourself before you start anything new, what is my intention and motivation for starting this? That is where the honesty of taking the pause before reacting to check in and see, is it your shadow that is leading the way? Are you doing this out of fear? Are you doing this out of a mind story? Are you doing it out of FOMO, the fear of missing out? Or is it coming from a higher guidance? Is it coming from the soul's aspect that's leading you on a path that you just know you have to follow? So when we consciously or unconsciously begin something from fear, then we're unwillingly planting those seeds of its eventual demise. So when you start something because, well, I have to do that, it's my responsibility. So and so's not going to like me anymore. They're going to talk about me. Whatever that is a fear-based decision. And eventually something is going to crash. Something is going to surface that is then going to be exposed to the light of truth that is going to show you the weakness of the foundation. So a foundation built on fear will inevitably crumble. The shadow state of immaturity is a state of continuously starting things without the clarity of your intention and motivation. It's just jumping to one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. It is very restless, just like the child that doesn't know how to sit still. But as an adult, is that serving you? So it's looking at the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, yet expecting different results. How many times do we continue to do the same behavioral pattern of starting something new, but we have all this stuff over here, but because it feels to be too hard or it doesn't have as much excitement anymore, it's instantly discarded and we jump into the next new thing. Maybe you're out shopping at the store and you're buying something only to go home to discover, oh, I already had a couple of those items. So when we're not aware of our tendency to do things so quickly because of that restlessness, then we're not mindfully living our life from a place of the soul's guidance, the light guidance. We're just on autopilot. We're in a very immature, reactive state that is not of the light guiding that way. In our world today, some of the most common expressions of immaturity are around power and money. So we see a lot of businesses competing to be the best of the best. We see how money has really put in us in the immaturity of, well, I have to buy that car so that I'm better than my neighbor. I have to have this kind of house, that kind of job. I got to wear these kind of clothes. I have to have my hair done a certain way, my nails done a certain way. But if you were to ask yourself the truth of why do I want that? A lot of times it goes back to the self-esteem, self-worth, or value of oneself. Because we are conditioned in a world that shows us a woman looks like this, a man looks like that. To be successful, you have to have these things. We buy into that story. But what if you're here to write your own story? What if you get to define what success looks like for you? What if you connect back to your natural style, the things that really light you up? No longer in the fear of, well, what are they going to think about it? But the freedom to live your life in your terms, in your way, according to what your natural rhythm and soul's guidance is here to express. When we look to Mother Earth, when there is no interference with her, when she's left by herself, she will flourish. She will reclaim the land that we strip. It might take some time, but eventually it will replenish itself. It does not need the human interference. That is our ego saying that it does. Humanity is not separate from nature. We are a part of nature. We have the same life force energy that is flowing through us. But what do we try to do? We try to control the way. We try to tell the world how to do things. We try to tell the energy how to do things. Instead of opening up like that flower, calling in the light and allowing it to guide the way through you. So immaturity arises when we're seeing ourselves as separate from nature and seeing ourselves separate from humanity. We're raised in a world where we're taught to compete against one another, but yet if you were to rise yourself up higher, you would see that we live in this little marble called Earth. We're all in this together, and therefore we are all in this state of thriving or surviving as a species. So when we learn to see ourselves in terms of the ability to work together towards the highest good, instead of staying separate and divided and in a state of competition, we could really, really thrive in that. So we are still very immature as a human species, but we're also growing and changing because that is programmed within our DNA. Like a child, we must eventually grow out of our self-obsession and reach maturity. And just like a young child, humanity is an organism that is too self-obsessed to be aware of the consequences of its actions. And although we are still immature, it is written in our DNA that we will gradually discover our actions do carry consequences, even though those consequences may only be realized by future generations. So instead of punishing ourselves, humanity has to learn to understand itself better. And I was really drawn to this card. This is the card number 8, Thecla, from the Everyday Goddess Oracle cards by Corey Thorne Cameron, and the artwork done by my eldest daughter, Amelia Richard. And it's such a powerful reflection of there's always children watching the older generations. And there's also the inner child of you learning from the parent of you. So we have all the ability to notice, am I still repeating the same patterns of my ancestors that were not working? Am I still engaged in the same kind of behavior that hurt me as a child? So it's knowing that at some point somebody has to be the one to say, you know what? This pattern's not going to go any further. This trauma is not going to continue. This behavior is going to end now. This ancestral way of doing things is going to stop. And it's at that point of that decision, that person who decides to do their own inner healing work, that then the younger generations get to benefit from that. So just like working with my daughter in the spiritual world, I was a very young mom when I had my daughter. I was 18 years old. I was a child learning to raise a child. And when I was being a parent, I didn't know my children's human design. I, like in conditioning of my mother, raised my children to the best of my ability, but I raised them under the narrative of children should behave in a certain way. And it was embarrassing if they acted up and they had to be, doing well in school and all these things in my mind to be accepted. Learning about human design and understanding their beautiful natural nature and the way that they're here to express themselves of the world then gave me an opportunity as an adult to go back to my children who are now adults and say, hey, I really love that aspect of you, and I'm sorry that I did not understand it at the time. Let's talk about some of the things that really help you to shine. So it comes with a state of vulnerability to admit, I was wrong. I did not see this. And to acknowledge that the hurts that we carry, we often unconsciously pass to our children, or the fears that we carry, we unconsciously pass to our children. But we also have the ability at whatever stage, whatever age you are at, to have new conversations, to begin something new. So it starts by looking at the dialogue that your mind speaks to you. The inner child of you that just wants to feel safe, it wants to feel secure. It probably didn't get the emotional nurturing that it needed, or the mental nurturing it needed, or the physical nurturing that it needed. No matter how wonderful our upbringings may have been, there's still aspects of that child that wants more love, right? There's always this desire because we remember unconditional love, but we don't live in that reality here on earth. So it's learning to parent your own child and to move through those cycles of immaturity within yourself instead of berating yourself or judging yourself or criticizing yourself or punishing yourself. It really is about learning to understand ourselves better. Why do I do that? Why do I continue to make those decisions? Why am I sticking into that pattern? And then, most importantly, what do you need to move yourself into a different cycle? To put that cycle to a completion and move into a cycle of empowerment. There's always two sides to any shadow energy. We have a repressive side where we keep everything buried in. We have a reactive side where we send it out into the environment. So in a reactive state, this is where we're very solemn, right? It's a very low vibrating energy, very gloomy, very dark, very serious about life. It often stays fixed on one single activity. So this is who I am. This is what I do. It's very afraid to start anything new. So it's repressing that energy. Every time an urge comes up of, ooh, I should go take a holiday. Ooh, I should go try this class. Ooh, I should try something different. The thought comes in, and as fast as the thought comes in, the fear in the body goes, nope, I can't do that. Right? So the scared little child is running the way. It needs the love of the parent to reassure it that it's safe and that it's okay. And depending on your life story and what you have experienced, that might take a lot of little baby steps in order to feel safe and secure enough to move forward. So again, it doesn't need judgment. It doesn't need more hurt. It's just going to hide behind a greater wall of protection if it knows that it's going to be attacked for what it is really feeling as a fear inside, instead of learning to very mindfully, maturely move through that fear to examine it. It carries a really deep sense of sadness because of that pressure to stay serious, to keep itself contained. It finds it impossible to embrace new things. It's really trying to hang on to that control to keep everything exactly as it is. There's a fear of the unknown, the unpredictability. And in some gates of your human design chart, that is one of the ancestral fears that you may have come here to learn to overcome. Not being able to cope with change. So every time that there's a change, every time there's something new that's introduced, it hides behind this wall of protection and it disengages themselves even further from participating in the world. And sometimes we see that in the older generations where the newer generations coming in, there's all these advances in technologies and there's all these new systems and ways of doing things and language that is not so easily understood by the older generations. So there comes this disconnect in that process of a beginning and an ending. And when we have a lack of willingness to want to understand one another and to bridge some of those barriers, to learn to integrate the wisdom and the teachings, then we tend to hide behind the separation mentality of staying in our different generational components instead of merging all of that together and respecting one another in our current walk of life. On the other side of this energy, that reactive nature, this is where we see fickle. Fickle is somebody who changes their mind all the time, all the time. They could be very, very hyper in their energy. This is the root center activation. They probably don't sit still long enough to evolve, right? We can't grow if we never complete a learning lesson. If we're always moving from one thing to the next thing and we don't follow through to the end, how do we ever evolve? So sometimes this is a fear-based reaction where somebody might start a lot of classes and get very close to finishing, but then puts it away. And there's often a fear of completing because then what? What's the expectation in that? So it's really recognizing your fears, your barriers, your habits, and then getting honest with yourself. What am I afraid of? Why am I leaving these things undone? What is happening in the energy? It's beginning a lot of things without any sense of commitment to develop them further. It just jumps on board. And a lot of times, oh, yeah, I can help you. And it might go and help for a little bit. And then it leaves before the job's even done. And then a lot of time people get very angry and upset because so and so said they were going to come over and they were going to help, but it's not finished. They've already moved on to the next commitment. So it's like this series of, just giving people a little taste of things, but it usually has an energy of creating more chaos than resolution. And you may recognize this in yourself with the relationships in your own life. You may be on the receiving end of somebody else doing that. And when you see it as the shadow energy of immaturity, then perhaps it takes away some of the own reactiveness for yourself. When you can look at that through the lens of compassion and go, oh, they're in a cycle. They're still learning what it means to follow through with something. Now, you may not trust them to the extent of seeing their cycles and their patterns and knowing that they're in that developmental stage. You may decide to take the approach of the teacher, the wisdom, and be very honest with them of their behavior and how it relates to yourself. Not trying to change the other individual, but bringing to the attention through healthy conversation and asking for them to clarify, bringing it to that awareness in a way that is to understand, not to judge. That is the key here. When people are reactive, they're trying to escape their fear of being trapped in a cycle, right? Because if they are continuously jumping from one thing to the next, they never actually face the fear of what it is that is unconscious within them. So that then traps them more into that cycle. If we stay and actually complete a cycle, eventually we're going to have to face the fear. So maybe you're afraid of making a mistake, so you don't finish something so that nobody else can judge it and tell you it's wrong. That's a very common one that a lot of clients go through. It's allowing yourself to learn through feedback, to acknowledge we all make mistakes. They're called learning opportunities. Sometimes there's a fear of responsibility. Somebody will tell you, well, that's yours. You did such a good job. You always get to do it. And you may not always want to do it. You may have only wanted to experience it once to see if you could do it. Getting clear on your whys and your fears are so powerful. The grace of the 53rd shadow is in showing you that you are immature until you begin to understand how deeply your actions, your thoughts, and your words are rooted in fear. As you come to understand this vast and sweeping insight, your heart begins once again to open and trust in life just as it is, with no opinion, no judgment, no attachment, and above all, no fear. So now we're going to move forward. We're going to move into the gift of expansion. And expansion is really the organic process of life, where the old makes way for the new. Everything eventually matures and expands. We physically grow. You move from the toddler to the child to the teenager to the adult to the elder. We will naturally physically grow. Emotionally, we will grow. Spiritually, we will grow. It's inevitable. We all move at our own time in our own place based on our willingness to do so. We have been given the free will choice to choose. So immaturity doesn't want to face or take responsibility for what is theirs. Those that are feeling this call, this expansion, claims back full responsibility of their thoughts, their actions, and very mindfully starts to be more self-aware. Self-awareness is maturity. Life itself, it only knows expansion. It only knows how to keep growing. The seed only knows how to blossom and bloom and drop more seeds. That's why Mother Earth always reclaims herself. So even when it chooses to contract, meaning it comes inwards, it only does so in order to expand further in a new or different direction. And this is where the cycles of the seasons teach us. In the season of winter, it contracts. The plant pulls all of its energy and brings it back down into the roots. So it's lost its leaves. It doesn't have an outward extension of life, but all the life is thriving at the root of it. And then in the springtime, it moves that energy back up and out and it expands. And it may expand into producing new shoots, new plants. It might have turned to a different direction to capture the light, the sun, the nutrients in the soil. It just knows. But how many times do we attune to the natural cycles and take our winter periods, our times of spring, our times of fall and releasing, our times of summer and expansion? How many times are we in tune to our own natural rhythms, knowing what's the opportune time for us to go and when it's the time to stop? We have been bought into man's time of the calendar and the clock and the system. And that is so against our natural way of trusting in the body's rhythm. Expansion is fractal. So this is the image of the seed of life. You know, we're constantly breaking out and expanding into new fractal patterns. It is constantly organically moving. We are always in a state of change. Energy itself is always in a process of expansion and growth. It is always flowing. The law of cause and effect, one of the universal laws, states that everything that comes before feeds what is to come. So that is the act of creation. So if you were to bring that into you, whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're feeding into your heart, into your mind, into your body, well, you are growing that. You will project that externally from you. That's also the law of attraction. So if your mind is thinking doom and gloom, well, then you will attract and you will give yourself reasons to justify that doom and gloom. You'll keep that story alive in your head. When we take responsibility for what we're thinking about, our role as co-creators, when you choose a new book, when you become the author to your story, and you start feeding light and feeding love and feeding positivity into yourself, you are then attracting those things back to you. So everything that comes before feeds what is to come. If you have a mirror reflection in front of you of things that aren't feeling so good, that's your opportunity to go within you and go, ooh, what pattern am I on? What is this teaching me? What fear do I need to acknowledge? And it's only seeing those pieces of ourselves that we can then change what we are feeding into the future, changing the story. We forget the power that we are the author, the creator of our own realities. True growth is going to expand beyond its comfort zone. It is continuously transcending its last level. So when you play a video game, you're always trying to level up. When you are feeling uncomfortable, that is your indicator that you must be on the right path. But we live in a world that wants to keep us comfortable. It wants to keep us complacent. It doesn't want us to grow. It doesn't want us to have our own mindset. Because when you have your own mindset and you're thinking for yourself, you're going to see who's trying to control the way, who wants the power and the money. The everyday people hold enormous power, but we have yet to realize that. When we're expanding as an individual, that's all about self-awareness. Maturity is self-awareness. Expansion demands that individuals transcend their personal opinions, their views, and attempts to understand what is going on. Our mind wants to rationalize everything. Your intuition just knows. The mind cannot go where intuition goes. You cannot rationalize how something just happens for you. You can't explain all these laws of the universe and this unseen world that's everywhere. It just is. We can't explain the nature of nature itself because that is beyond our personal our comprehension. So we're here to allow ourselves to be swept aside by life, to let go of our identities, our definitions of who we are and who we think we are and where we think we're going. Every time we say, well, this is who I am and this is what I have, or we tell the universe exactly how to line everything up, we're not allowing ourselves to be guided by the universe. So it's always saying, I would like this or something better. Don't limit your potential. We cannot dream as big as creation dreams for us. So when we allow ourselves to be moved by life, when we allow ourselves to be open by life, when we let that guide the way, then you are just like that dandelion seed that takes to the wind, and wherever you fall is where you're meant to be. And then you'll take roots and you will thrive wherever that is to then produce more seeds, more opportunities, more expansion of yourself. Expansion is occurring through the heart. And the Indians call this the bhakti. So the bhakti is a devotional energy. When you are devoted to the higher vibrating energies, meaning you are devoted to the virtues, you are creating more compassion, understanding, forgiveness, grace, excitement, joy, love, that naturally opens the heart. When you are opening the heart, you are transcending, you are moving through the fears, You are moving more light through your body. You are allowing yourself to be present in your human experience. And that process of expansion, it happens when consciousness is permitted to penetrate form in a greater depth. So when you are opened up, consciousness is coming through you. You're not stopping it at the mind. You're not trying to hold on to how do I do this. You're opening up to invite in the guidance. Consciousness then, through your free will, gets to come into this world of form through you as a vessel in a greater depth to be of service to humanity, to move through the root system of you and to feed into the vibration of the earth itself. Which is why it makes such a difference when we each do our own healing work, when we transcend to the next level of our own awareness, when we don't compare ourselves to anybody else, but you work on being the best version of you that you can be, constantly learning and growing, not perfecting, but knowing that you are here to be human and learning through those moments, stopping and reflecting and choosing by that guidance system of how to stay in alignment towards the heart's extension, the heart's expansion. And that does take enormous trust. And the mind doesn't trust. Whenever something is simple, it doesn't trust that. It wants things to be complicated. It wants our relationships to be complicated. But when you're attuned to life and you're attuned to the rhythm of the life force energies that are just here, you have literally the whole universe to support you. When you're moving in the direction of life itself, you're a vessel for that. It is so simple. It's trusting moment to moment to moment to moment and living in the awe of, oh my gosh, I knew that was going to happen. Oh my gosh, I wanted that and it's right here. If it's serving the highest good, all that you need will be made available to you. We create the fear stories of lack. We create the fear story of I have to do it all by myself. When we allow ourselves to be guided and connected to one another's fractal energies, well, then we're naturally expanding our time, our energy, our resources. And in that expansion, we all get to flourish. So it's not working harder, it's working smarter. It's the concept of many hands make light work. So by letting go of all definitions of who you are and where you think you are going, then you're going to feel swept away by life. You're going to feel that freedom, that expansion in your breath, in your mind, in your body, in your harmony, in the relaxation, in the physical nature of who you are. That's what it means to expand. When you look at that in terms of business, we see true expansion when the people in the business who represent the consciousness of the organization are growing too. The business then grows in many directions simultaneously rather than in a single direction. So in the old models, the days of a lot of us and our parents and whatnot, it was the boss made the decisions, gave the orders, and everybody else had to serve that, right? It went in a very linear way at the detriment a lot of times to the ones underneath. That is the hierarchical order. We're starting to see people coming together in what is known as synergy, meaning that they are being the best versions of themselves and they naturally find others who are being the best versions of themselves. And when they work together, they create something new that is the benefit to many. Well, a thriving business for the golden future, for the way ahead, is going to see that when it invests in its people, when it invests in the consciousness of the organization, and it supports the growth and the evolution of what those individuals do best and where they really shine, you're going to have the loyalty from those individuals that want things to thrive because they're feeling good about their contribution. And you're going to see an organization thrive because its departments as units are thriving and expanding out in their area. So it's no longer the concept of micromanaging because everybody is willingly showing up to be the best that they can be in alignment to the vision for what is of the highest good of service, not of profit in terms of control and money from a fear-based definition, but understanding as we lean towards the Sudi here of superabundance, that when we are thriving in being the best versions of ourselves, we can't help but attract back the full energy of what it is to thrive. So when we purely give in service from the heart, it has no choice but to flow back to us. That is the law of attraction. That's the definition of love. Unconditional love cannot help but give purely of itself. So when you open your heart in the service of love, you are also open to receiving unconditional love from the universe. It can't help itself. Love feeds love. Light feeds light. And it's the same with, well, fear feeds fear, and anger fears anger. Which one do you want to do? So learning to open that heart, learning to remind yourself that you're safe to be here. You chose to be a human at this time, this powerful time of transformation. Learning to examine your patterns of behavior, learning to claim full responsibility for yourself, using obstacles as opportunities for maturity, for growth, for expansion, using your relationships as beautiful reflections of how to grow love and trust and beautiful conversations. There is so much possibility here within the expansion of self. So we're going to end this lesson by talking really quickly about the Sudi of superabundance. The 53rd Sudi represents the state beyond and behind awareness, known as pure consciousness. At this final stage, the stage known as realization or enlightenment, the great and final leap occurs. It is the shocking leap into pure consciousness and the end of evolution itself. So as you can see through this journey, there's a lot to embrace. There's a lot of opportunity when we engage in life in the simple acts of living, when we allow ourselves to tune back to our natural rhythm, to notice that, just because it comes easy to you, don't discount as one of those gifts that you bring to the rest of humanity. We're so conditioned by the world around us to stay busy, to be seeking, to compare ourselves to others, and all those things exhaust the energy. So you are in Cancer season, you are in the Northern Hemisphere in the middle of summer. Summer is a reflection of superabundance. It is an opportunity to engage in more play, more passion, more delight, to really raise your vibration, to open up and to receive the light of the sun, which is source energy. So use this opportunity for your own maturity, your own expansion by carving out some time to see your patterns, to very mindfully ask yourself before jumping on to something new, why do I want to do that? What is the intention? And am I committed enough to see it to the end? So don't be fooled by the FOMO stories, the fear of missing out. Don't be fooled by feeling bored. Notice this is an opportunity to be with yourself. And we have often lived in a world full of so many distractions that we don't know how to be by ourselves. We don't know who we are. So it's like being forced to go sit with a stranger, and that feels uncomfortable. But the more you get to know you, the more you get to tune into your rhythm, the more you treat life in the moment to moment and you ask yourself, where are we going next? Have that excitement, have that curiosity, being open and willing to go in a different direction. Allow yourself the time and space just to breathe more deeply into you and to see your roots. Anchor deeply into the earth that is supporting your every movement. A lot of times we have very shallow roots because we are so ready to be reactive in fight or flight and take off. So notice for yourself if that even bothered you. What does that mean to put roots down? Do you have a reaction or a story to that? So I look forward to continuing our journey through Cancer season with you. We are going to be dropping out of the root center, moving up back into the throat for our last two gate activations, ending out Cancer season. And if you were a part of Gemini season, the season before this, that was a complete journey through the throat center. So we had gone through 7 activations in the throat center during Gemini season. We continued some of that in Cancer season, went through the root center acknowledgement, and now we're coming back up to finish the final gates within the throat. So the throat center is all about communication, manifestation, and metabolizing. So how do you take your life force energy and how do you use that for the greatest good, for more vitality in yourself and to feed into the world around you? Take care, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next video. Namaste.